What would you recommend for my situation? In our last video, we looked at a short case study of a 42-year-old individual that wanted to pay in $30,000 per year, but was undecided with respect to the number of years he wanted to pay into the policy. And he ultimately decided on a policy that would allow him to have flexibility, meaning if he wanted to fund it for 7 years, 15 years, 20 years, he could adjust as time passes without any restrictions. In this video, we are going to look at a different case, much different with respect to the funding, similar in age. We've got a 40-year-old individual, and he's got a lump sum of $450,000. Now, what's interesting about this case study, to provide a little bit of additional information, it's actually a business policy. When I say business policy, his plan is to have his company own the policy, and there will be two policies in this situation, which we have one for him and then one for his partner, who is also 40 years old, which made it very easy from a modeling standpoint because we could show a variety of scenarios, different companies and products just for one 40-year-old individual, because the numbers would look identical, assuming they both received the same health rating, they're both healthy, and we're hopeful that that will be the case. But his plan here, $450,000, he wants to move that money into a policy over 2 payments. However, he mentioned in one of his initial emails that he would be open to funding it over a different period of time if that achieved greater results for him. When I say greater results, I specifically mean maximizing the cash value and a higher internal rate of return, which we will look at in this video. Now here we've got flexibility of payments. I skipped over this part earlier. This is important to him, and specifically what he mentioned is that he'd like to have a policy where he can commit to a minimal amount and be able to add more money to the policy at discretion. A concern that he had expressed was that he did not want to receive a 6-figure bill. For example, if he said, I want to move this into a policy over 2 years, 2 payments, and let's assume the payments look like this. The first payment is $250K, and the second payment is $200K. He does not want to get a bill for $200,000 in the second year in the event that he has moved that money into a real estate deal. He doesn't want to be on the hook, or he does not want the policy to feel like a burden. He would much prefer to have just a minimum premium due, be able to pay that, and then add the rest of the balance over the course of the year, or not at all. Maybe add the money at a later date. And you can do that with a policy if you build in enough flexibility. When we talk about PUA riders and policy design, that's a very important piece. So what we're going to look at here, we've got 2 companies, multiple products. What we're going to look at in this video is just part 1, which will focus on different Guardian products. And what we'll look at specifically is as follows. We've got their Executive Strategies Whole Life product, and then their L95 policy. Now, the Executive Strategies product, typically the minimum base premium requirement for this is $100,000. The advantage to it is that you get 95% of that base premium in cash value right out of the gates in the first year. Now, that minimum base premium of $100,000 is a requirement if it is a case for a single individual. When I say single, just one policy on one individual, the person can be married, not like a person that's completely single, but a non-business case. If it's a case like this one, where we've got 2 partners, and the plan is actually to have the business own the policy. If it's a business-owned policy, and there's more than one policy, the requirements for the Executive Strategies Whole Life product are different than what an individual has, or what an individual is required to pay in the minimum premium. For a company-owned policy, what we have instead is for the company, the minimum base premium is $50,000. And that's for all policies combined. So what that means is if we have 2 individuals here, both age 40, and they elect the Executive Strategies Whole Life product, what they could do is both have a policy with a $25,000 minimum premium, and they qualify for this product. Guardian would issue it. So that's a nice item to be aware of. When it comes to business planning, the limitations are lower for this product, which is nice, specifically the base premium requirement. So based on his unique situation, this is a product that we want to consider, and he specifically asked for it as well. It was apparent that he has been doing his research just based on his initial email and such. So let's take a look at these different options, shall we? What we've got first, on the left, our executive strategies 2-pay scenario and 3-pay scenario. And this is based on the present dividend interest rate with Guardian. Executive strategies 2-pay, $25,000 base premium. Remember, that will be the minimum requirement. And in the first year, we've got a 10/90 split. He's paying in $250,000. Second year, $200,000. First year cash value, $230,000. Second year, $425,000. Quick side note here is that he can continue to pay $250K per year if he chooses to do so. The policy will accommodate that design. He can do that for at least 5 to 6 years with the setup. But we're showing just the lump sum, as that is what he wants to start with in this example. It's what we put together. Death benefit, $5.1 million, gives him a MEC limit of $250,000, which means that's the minimum death benefit needed in order to pay up to $250K per year. And we need that for the first year payment. Break-even point, year 4. And he did explicitly state in his first email that included details that he wants the break-even to occur between years 3 and 4. Frankly, that's as early as we can get it to with a well-designed policy, typically between years 3 and 4, sometimes between years 3 and 5. For a healthy 40-year-old male with large lump sums like this, you should be able to attain year 4 in most cases. But here's the 2-pay, and then here's the 3-pay scenario. Exact same base premium. So normally, if I'm funding a policy like this, $150 per year, where would we recommend setting that base premium? Not at $25,000. It'd be closer to $15,000. It's at $25,000 due to this particular product and the requirements that come with it. So when we compare these two, what you'll find is that the 3-pay scenario is slightly stronger, not much of a difference. The break-even is still year 4, got a little bit less in year 4 than the 3-pay compared to the 2-pay. If I look at year 20, looking at it long-term, I'm at 907 with the 3-pay and 903, almost 904 with the 2-pay. So there's almost no difference when I look at the present dividend rate. And a quick side note, this dividend rate is actually based on the 2022 schedule. I believe it was either the evening of or the next day that Guardian announced their updated dividend rates, which is 5.75% now. But that's okay, just in case we look at the updated numbers and they're different. But to get back on track here, typically when a business owner or real estate investor sees this, they'll gravitate toward this scenario because they say long-term, there's almost no difference. But this I value more, the upfront cash value. Even if I don't use it, I just like having it in the policy faster. Keep that part in mind because we're going to come back to that. First, let's take a look at the L95 product. The advantage to this option, that's the first advantage, I should say. Minimum base premium of $15,000, and it's about $15,000 total. The true base premium is $13,000 and change, and then we have a term rider attached as well. But my point is, if he likes the idea of committing to a lower minimum than $25,000, and this would be for each of them, so call it about $30K total for the company, as opposed to $50K total for the company, because there's 2 partners age 40, this may be appealing. When we look at the upfront cash value, year 1, it's similar, a little bit less than the Executive Strategies product, but by the second year, you've got more. Break even is year 4, you're at $457. And this product is stronger upfront, but long-term, not quite as much based on the non-guarantees. If we look at the guaranteed values, What's very interesting is that everything's the opposite, which is not meant to cause confusion, but rather meant to provide awareness. And this is often where people will look at it and say, okay, like which one should I pick? I would ask the question, when you look at the non-guaranteed and guaranteed values, if you were forced to make a decision without me, which one would you pick? Meaning, are you more comfortable based on the guarantees, or are you comfortable based on the non-guaranteed values? The guarantees is what I want. Okay, then I would start to gravitate toward that L95 product. If you said, well, it's one of the major mutual companies. I've heard you and your company say that you've seen the major mutual companies deliver. If that's the case, I'm comfortable looking at the non-guaranteed values when making my decision with these products. Then I might say, okay, the executive strategies is a good option in that particular case. I'll let you know what I would do personally as well. There is a what if scenario. But before I do that, let's take a look at the internal rate of return here. So what we'll do, let's look at the two-pay scenario. We'll have some fun with this. Whenever we do this, we also like to cross-reference it with the IRRs on the illustration. I mean, they match every time, but still, for the sake of accuracy, it's very important to do that. So we've got our annual internal rate of return, which isolates the annual growth rate on the product, and then the average internal rate of return, which will take into account all years that we're looking at. So let's update the averages for the other ones. Let's update everything, actually. There we go. And then let's do this. Let's do the same thing with the guarantees. And why don't we first do this? All right, so we've got our internal rates of return. Fun stuff, right? So annual IRR isolates what the policy is growing by each year. And then we've got our average internal rate of return. The best way to explain this is what did the cash value average out in terms of the internal rate of return over the past 10 years or 20 years? If we're looking at 20 years, the answer to the question will be right here. 3.63% compared to this guy, 3.76%. Now, whenever we're looking at the average internal rate of return, what we do have to keep in mind is the number of years we get the money into the policy. For example, if you just take 20 years, let's say I put in $450K all up front, and then I've got $903,000 by year 20, my average return will not be the number I see here, 3.63%. And the reason why is because when the average IRR is calculated, it's going to take into account when the actual payments are made. Meaning I don't start earning anything on the second $200,000 here until it goes into the policy in year 2. Same thing over here with the 3-pay scenario. But now I've got the IRR all laid out for someone very analytical. It does help to provide more information so I can make the proper decision. Same thing when I look at the guaranteed values. So this is helpful. It's helpful to me if we flip positions to make the decision that I feel is best. And here's what I would do to provide my recommendations. We've got everything up here. I would start by saying the decision is ultimately up to you. But here's what I would do if we flipped positions. I would gravitate toward the executive strategies product, where you and your partner each have that product, breaking it up over 3 years with that minimum premium of $25,000. It'll be closer to about a $26,000 true minimum when we factor in the term rider. That's for both of you. So it'll be a true minimum commitment of, call it $52,000 per year. So that's the minimum commitment, and you can pay up to $150 per year, maximizing the cash value. I would gravitate toward that option if and only if you're comfortable with that $52,000 minimum commitment and also a little bit weaker guarantees. When I say that, $52,000 minimum commitment, a little bit weaker guarantees, what are your thoughts? Do you have any questions on that? And let them answer. Because if there's hesitancy there, or if someone prefers, if you preferred, for example, the stronger guarantees, The L95 product, that alternative, I would recommend that if, one, you like stronger guaranteed values, because that gives you just that, and then two, you like a lower minimum premium commitment. Because what was the true minimum for one option, for one L95 policy? $15,000. That includes the base premium and the cost of the term rider. So if you and your partner both go with Guardian and both select that L95, then the true minimum would be about $30,000 per year combined, compared to the executive strategies, which would be closer to $52,000 per year. So depending on that minimum comfort level, if the $52K, when he hears that, if he feels like, that might be a burden to a degree, then the L95 might be more appealing. Or as we transition into part two, they might elect to go with one L95 and then one MassMutual product. And they actually like the MassMutual options a lot in our most recent email exchange when they did their analysis and provided some feedback. But my point is, the recommendation I give is going to be based on what the individual is trying to accomplish, and it may change too. Typically it does change when I receive more information, and before we finalize everything, I'm going to have gone through everything thoroughly and really ask them for their recommendation. What would they recommend for themselves, and help them come to that decision on their own, because it is up to them ultimately. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We will segue into part two. We'll cover that in our next video. And if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe for more, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Steve Parisi here. If you enjoyed the content you just saw, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for future videos. If you'd like more information or to see some custom policies for yourself, feel free to call or email our offices at the contact information below.